All right, good morning, or rather good afternoon, Trade Pros. Welcome back to another edition here of our midday update. Let's go ahead and get started here, guys. So first things first, let's cover some of the news that came out this morning after the morning update that Georgie so kindly covered for us. A couple of low impact events we did see come out. We had the Richmond Manufacturing Index, which came in at minus 12 versus 5 expected. And we also had at 10 a.m., we had U.S. Existing home sales also came in at a bit of a miss, 5.27 million versus 5.35 million expected. So the Fed Manufacturing Index, the minus 12 versus plus 5, that was the lowest reading since January of 2013. There is a backlog of new orders and employment, all negative readings. And again, as mentioned, existing home sales came in at 5.27 million versus 5.32 million. So that's basically all that we had on the agenda for today. Georgie mentioned a couple of the overnight drivers, mainly the fact that we have earnings coming out, a bunch of earnings coming out today on some of the key names. And that's pretty much it. We are seeing the US dollar rallying a little bit today, coming into the 2018 highs at 97.71. And that is basically all that we have on this front. We did have another, I believe it was Moody's, came in and they downgraded the Boeing stock again to a sell. So that's Moody's, and I believe Fitch was the first one to do it. That's kind of weighing on the Dow this morning. And that's what we got for the remainder of the agenda. Nothing else on there, nothing else scheduled for the remainder of today's session. As mentioned, tomorrow we do have a couple other figures coming out of the States, such as your flash manufacturing PMI and your flash services PMI, as well as our favorite crude oil inventories at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. So until then, we don't really have anything on the agenda. Again, it's going to be important to have a new squawk in order to keep on top of any potential tape bombs that might hit the wires, especially as they regard to any tensions between Iran and foreign countries. We had on Friday, Iran seizing the UK tanker, and now UK is kind of called to its allies to start using, what was the exact term that they used here? Basically called on their allies to protect the interests of, the oil tankers getting through that Strait of Hormuz safely. So that's all that we had on that front. Let's jump into the charts now and have a look at what the quote boards are telling us, where the volume's sitting, and let's go from there. So let's switch over to the charts here for you guys. Awesome, here we are. So crude oil up top, very light volume today, 352,000, and we're kind of seeing that in the daily change percentage, which is relatively unchanged. As far as the S&P 500 is concerned, again, a bit of a drop-off here on volume. You can see we're at 550,000, very light volume for today's session. And again, we are down so far today, still above the previous day close, but this has been very slow, it's trying your patience, quite the best way for me to put it. So if you are patient, you can look to trade it. If not, I'd recommend you stay away from that, stay away from crude as well today, and come hit this thing tomorrow. So what we are seeing, again, light volume on both of these fronts, not very much change percentage. So volume's showing us, there's a lack of interest on today's session. Daily change percentage showing us kind of the same, not very much movement. Stocks are relatively flat, and so is crude oil on the session. Let's jump into our pivot charts. Pivot charts kind of tell you the story, especially on crude. We are sitting in between that pivot and the S1. So a little bit of a range right now. We are just stuck in that range at the moment. And, preceding trend here, if I zoom out on this, you can see was a little bit bearish, right? So lower lows, lower highs. We are still kind of holding a higher low here, but we have failed to get back above that previous high here around the 57 mark. So, as long as we remain below that pivot, below the 5640s, I'm just looking for a press back down into S1 and possibly back down into the lower end of those support structures, seeing as how, the underlying trend at the moment is bearish. So bearish until the trend turns. Where will the trend turn? Well, above 57. That's when, the bulls will start pressing this thing higher, and we could get a little bit of a press off there. Until then, I think upside remains capped below that pivot. That's kind of the play we'll be looking for. S&P 500, this is kind of what we're looking for as well. Similar structure. You are seeing lower lows, lower highs. We are having a bit of a climb up today. That ultimate resistance is around the 3010 mark. We've come into the R1. We've poked our heads above it, which is right around 3000, dipped below it. And then we had, which you will see on the 1 hour time frame here, we did have a rotation after we broke through and closed below. We did have a rotation that came back in to retest R1. That rotation closed back below it, showing us that sellers are currently supporting that level. At this point, we are just looking for a press back down to that pivot right around the 85s. That's kind of the target here. You've got a little bit of, support in that zone on the way down, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. So let's pop open the Crude chart here. You guys will see, this thing is kind of sitting in a very messy range at the moment, and we are kind of in the middle of the range right now. Top of the range is your previous day high, bottom of the range is your overnight low. Not really looking for any trades in this section of the chart. I'd prefer to see it come back up into there. At that point, I'd be looking for potential shorts. As you can see, we had a nice move off of that level here. Had a little bit of resistance here at that previous day high the other day. Came up into this level here overnight, sold off, tried it again, sold off. And I'd be looking to see if we can get another move up in there. You've also got your 5-day value area high here. So a little pop into there for the sellers to step back in, press it back down to the other end. That's basically the main trade that we'd be looking for. You could find long trades, short trades within the middle. There's not very much of an edge in that. But once you start looking at the extremes, that's kind of where you can get a better idea of what might be happening. So that's kind of the play on Crude. S&P 500, I don't even think this market knows what she wants, at this part of the day. We did sell off of the highs here, came into the value area high, sold off. We've seen that level kind of defended here by the sellers. We had one rotation, that one got sold, came down as low as 91, rotated back up to the 98s, that level got sold again. Next rotation down, not quite as deep, down into the 92s. Back up, that level got sold, and now we've breached below new lows. Now we're rotating back up. So what do we happen to rotate back up into? Well, you've got all these wicks here. That's kind of been the level today. Wouldn't be surprised to see it get back up in there. Would I sell it up there? I don't know. I feel like the sell is a little bit late here. We've had 1, 2, 3 chances here. If it gets back up in there, it's not as attractive as a short, but at this point in the session, that is the range highs. Those are kind of the highs, and you got the open sitting right above that. So if we get back to the open, you could look for another potential fader. Do I think that gets you all the way back down to the overnight low? No, but you can still get a pretty nice opportunity if it comes in there from the 98s, maybe down to the 95s, back into these view apps before we start pressing higher. So that is basically what we're looking for on these markets, guys. I can see there's a couple of you watching. A couple of you are in the chat, which is great to see. Tamelo, hello. Midhun, hello. Silvio, hello. So that's basically what we've got for this part of the agenda. Let's jump on to our TradePro Performance Index here. Show you guys what the room was doing, how the room did today. And I'll give you guys a couple of moments to ask any questions you might have about us, about trading in general. We'll look to cover that. And maybe if you guys ask the right questions, we might do a Q&A on Friday. Who knows? We'll have a look. But if you guys ask the right questions, that'll give me the incentive, instead of doing this, to do a Q&A where you guys can ask us any questions about TradePro, questions about trading in particular or in general, anything like that. So this is your opportunity. Say hello, ask questions. What you are seeing in front of you, July 23rd, today's session. This is how our room did. 72.5% of the room was positive on today's session. What is positive? Positive is 56% up and just under 16% flat on the session. You are up or flat. You did not lose money, which is a positive result. Down 27.45%. So great bounce back from the last couple of days. It's been a little bit tougher trading, but very happy to see that the majority of the room did well today, and we look to continue that trend strong as we have now surpassed, tomorrow marks the 1 week date until until July trading ends. So that's our TRADEPRO performance index. This is a great look at what our team's doing. None of the traders here, not George, not Vic, not myself, or not Steven. Those are the main moderators. None of us vote in this. This is all the community. So this is how the community is doing. And, 65.73% up on that. Yeah, Will, summer trading is very tough. I was telling the guys in the room today, it really tries your patience. I was waiting personally for a trade, probably for 45 minutes for it just to trade up, I think 2.5 points. And then once it got there, it took another 15 minutes. And then it was a quick stop run. And then you had a quick 2-point move, which I did not catch, didn't get traded at the top there. So that's summer trading. The main thing with summer trading is you just got to be patient, number one, and you've got to be disciplined, number two. You got to have the discipline, or rather you got to have the patience to wait for the trade, and you've got to have the discipline to not chase the trade if you don't get filled. Summer really brings out the worst habits in us. And, whereas during the volatile markets, you can get away with some of the worst, some bad habits. Summertime is generally the environment that brings out the worst in you and, can really chop up your account. So patience and discipline, very, very important for summertime trading. And just to follow up, when does summer trading usually end? Usually ends around the first week of September, right around the Labor Day weekend. Right after the Labor Day weekend is when you get a majority of your hedge fund managers, portfolio managers, institutional traders coming back from their summer homes in the Hamptons back to the trade desks and throwing around some size. So that's usually when it starts to pick up. And I'm not seeing any other questions in there. I do see there's 19 of you currently watching and only one's asking questions. So we'll see if that gives me enough of a reason to do a live FAQ on Friday. But I'm going to leave the chat open for another minute or so. If you guys have any questions, throw them in there. If not, I'll sign off at 12:20 or so, and we will see you guys tomorrow. So let's just jump on back to here. We got a thumbs up from Will. Thumbs up, Will. And we'll leave this guy open for another 15 seconds or so. See if there's any questions come in while I drink my... All right. Looks like we got a bit of a shy crowd today. That's okay. If you guys have questions, ask them tomorrow. Until then, you guys know the 3 rules. Remain patient, remain diligent, and remain disciplined. Until tomorrow, good luck and good trading, guys. Take care.